Hi, Sheila.
Hi, Lee.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm very excited about this interview because I've been wanting to do this for ages now. So I'm just thrilled that you're here, and thank you so much for coming on and letting me do this. And for those that don't know Sheila Malkani, she is a Chinese medicine practitioner, a nutritionist, a metabolic specialist, and a glucose guru. She is a book of knowledge and the perfect person to have today to interview and hopefully answer a lot of your questions. So welcome, Sheila. And then for those that don't know me, my name is Leanne Bunzire. I am a fitness health coach in Geneva, Switzerland. I've been coaching women for over 17 years. I'm hugely passionate about health and fitness and women. And about 6 months ago, I went on my own personal health journey. Approaching 47, I felt like something was not quite right in terms of my energy level, my sleep, excess weight gain, and a variety of other things. And I decided to venture into the world of glucose monitoring with a little push from Sheila. It was a bit of a wow moment for me that going into this area of understanding what's happening inside has had such a profound impact, positive impact on my overall health in terms of sleep, energy level, weight management, and so many other things. It became a wow moment because I realized how many women out there have no idea of the positive impact of just knowing what's going on inside and also knowing that it's not complicated. It's not complicated at all, and nor is it disruptive of your family life. Just a few tweaks in a year can make a huge difference in terms of overall health and happiness. So let's get stuck into the questions today, and thank you again, Sheila.
Well, no, thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited, of course, always to talk about health, all health-related things, and especially women's health. So thanks so much for having me with you
I
today.
wanted to get stuck with one of the main things is what I would like to know is your take on just modern lifestyle health, chronic disease, and really the big question of the hour is glucose monitoring, how that ties in together. Your personal take on it.
Yes, so health in and of itself is a topic, right? A question of definition already. And for me, health is really all about being vibrant and energized for as long as possible, so that I can live as long as possible in my fullest capacity to do the things I love to do, and the full with the full energy and the full ability to do these things. Because I think a lot of people don't realize, yes, we live in a period where lifespan has really grown a lot, but health span actually hasn't. And when you look at the last 10, 20 years of most people's lives, they're actually not in that great shape. And so the idea for me really is drive your health span. That will, of course, drive your lifespan. But with that, what you're also doing is you're proactively doing everything you can to prevent really what are the big killers of our time in our modern lifestyle today, which are chronic diseases. So, dementia, cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes. Um, and really, at the core of all of these chronic diseases, there's one big common factor, and that is energy deficiency. Right? But make no mistake, it's not like suddenly, randomly, there's some unfortunate event that will happen that will allow you to suddenly get this disease in the future. Right? Our bodies are actually sending us many, many signals long before the big stuff, the debilitating stuff happens. And I think maybe as women, maybe particularly, maybe that's because, obviously that's where I also have the most experience. There are actually lots of little signals that our bodies are already sending that are showing, hey, you know what? Things are not going so well in here. There is an energy deficiency already happening. So when I hear things like repeated migraines, energy dips throughout the day, as you were mentioning, brain fog, repeated urinary tract infections, maybe not even just shaking a cold off the way you're actually used to, consistent joint pains, fertility issues, or let's be a little bit more cosmetics. The one often factor that drives women to get into this is this persistent weight gain, first of all, or the weight that just doesn't seem to come off, even though you seem to be doing everything the way you think you should be doing, or wrinkles, the aging of the skin, cellulite. I mean, these are all signals your body is already sending you, telling you there is an energy crisis. It's happening at a cellular level. And, the common blood test won't necessarily show this. And so this is where this then takes me to glucose monitoring, because for me it is without a doubt, I think, the most powerful tool we have today at our disposal to get a little glimpse into what's happening in terms of energy, sufficiency, disposal, creation at a cellular level. And it's a great tool because it allows you over, it's almost like a movie of a 24-hour period to actually see what's going on. And so it gives you amazing insights into how your lifestyle choices impact your nutrition choices, of course, but also all your other lifestyle choices, your stress levels, impact you at the cellular root level.
Basically, but a massive thing. I mean, I think that's, as you know, I've been fit most of my life, and I'm just feel I wish I tapped into this earlier. That's my only regret, because I think everyone should be doing this. If you can explain why you don't have to be pre-diabetic to be doing this.
No, for sure not. So, and there's many layers kind of to your question. I think the first one is that, yes, it's great that you're doing your lab tests every year. That's super. But it's only a snapshot. It's a snapshot in a given time. And so doesn't give you the full range of what's actually happening in terms of all the energy flows throughout your day in that period. So it's only one snapshot. The second thing is our medical system is built in such a way that we only deal with the issue when it has become an issue, right? So I kind of say it's like going over the cliff. Once I'm over the cliff, then all of a sudden I'm in the range where the doctor will say, okay, well, you know what, here's a rope. Let me try to, get you back up again. But why not already start treating the problem when you're seeing the cliff coming your way? You're heading there, you're going at full speed. I mean, I would like to avoid going over the cliff rather than waiting until I've gone down. I don't want to have to deal with chronic medications and chronic treatments all over the time. The third thing I'll say is that, especially as it relates to glucose management, so I think everybody's kind of sold on the fact that you need to have your glucose within a certain range. And many people think that the blood test, the annual blood test that you get on that, so the famous hemoglobin A1C, is the marker. And it is one very important marker. But there are actually other metabolic markers that are already starting to creep up way before that marker will actually show. Because our bodies are so resilient and so resistant that they'll actually take a lot before they'll actually show up. And so that's why I go back to these symptoms, because your body is supposed to flourish and supposed to feel great. So all of these things that impact your quality of life, when they're chronic, so when they're repeated, those are not normal. Or maybe they are normal, sadly, they may be normal, but they're not necessary, and they're definitely not a sign of just aging or just getting along with it. There's for sure a lot of room of pushing that out as far as you can, as long as you want to. And I'd say the fourth thing that I want to say on that is there was a great study that really pushed the whole notion of continuous glucose monitoring, I think, to the forefront, exactly to your point, outside of the diabetic range, which was a study done in 2018 at Stanford, where they put continuous glucose monitors on non-diabetic individuals. And the results were really astounding. So you could see through this 24-hour measurement with people who had fabulous fasting glucose, great hemoglobin A1C scores, you could see that there was metabolic dysfunction happening. You could see that, the various things that we measure when we look at the continuous glucose monitor were out of range and were a great predictor, not only for symptoms, but also for resulting problems that were happening in the following years.
Shows you, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Unfortunately, it takes, I think, something negative to happen, right? I mean, to struggle with something, to say, oh, I need to check things out or go to the doctor. And the whole thing is that it should be a preventative. I mean, if I didn't have nothing was wrong with me, really. I just wasn't sleeping great. My energy was a little bit lower. Fatigue and constant cravings. Those are my main things.
And you're already a high performance athlete, right? I mean, you're already dialed in. You're super knowledgeable. You're super well trained. There's so many things, and still you could definitely optimize that and take that to a completely different level.
But now just doing that right now, doing this about 6 months now, elevated massively. I feel better than I did when I was 38 and I'm 47. So it's just something. It's just
yes.
So true. Things so true what you're saying. I think for those that don't know, just some of the basics is what is insulin, why do people become insulin resistant, and what happens if you become insulin resistant. If you could just kind of basic form of what it is and why is this something that is not a good thing?
Yeah, so for energy to be able to get into the cell, one critical hormone that our pancreas secretes is insulin. And so there's two forms really that are known as dysfunctions. One is people who don't make insulin, and this is considered type 1 diabetes. So those are the ones that we were used to be more familiar with. So people have to take insulin basically for the rest of their life because the pancreas doesn't make it. And then there are people that become insulin resistant over time. And this is truly a lifestyle disease. So this basically means that you have so much assault on those little energy cells, those little energy factories that we have on our cells called mitochondria, that at some point they become dysfunctional. They cannot handle it anymore. And so they will basically they will dysfunction, so they will not work the way they should. They don't die off the way they should, and they don't burn as efficiently as they should. And this then means that you have products coming in that your cells now cannot shuttle properly into the cells anymore. So what is it going to do? It's going to do basically three things. One, it's going to shut itself down because it's going to say, "Oh, I can't handle this right now." So it's like, imagine you're in a disco and everybody's storming in. At some point, you're going to shut the doors, right? Because you're going to say, "I just can't handle it anymore." So they're going to shut the doors. And simply put, this is what insulin resistance is. And so that's very dangerous on many levels because the first thing, the reaction that your body will then do is to say, "Oh, well, I can't get in. You know what? I'm just going to push in some more. I'm going to get some more people, and let's push harder and harder." So the insulin is going to creep up even more. And when that doesn't happen, all that excess glucose that can't get in the cell, it has to go somewhere. And so it'll either be burnt off in these toxic byproducts, or it'll be put into fat storage. And in any event, the result always is this, what I was saying before, this energy deficiency that's actually happening in the cell. The other thing is that what the cell will do is it's going to create an alarm signal, because saying, "You know what, all these people are knocking on my door, I can't handle it. You need to come and help me." So it's sending lots of signals to the immune system. So it almost becomes a neurotransmitter signal that is sent out. So the cells are actually throwing out their energy to the immune system, which then shows up in chronic inflammation. This chronic inflammation, repeated sinusitis, as an example, repeated throat aches, all these other tendon issues that we're talking about, things that won't necessarily show up in a blood test, but that are already showing that your immune system is working really, really hard. And so insulin resistance is dangerous. It can happen really through lifestyle factors. So this toxic mix of eating too often, too high glycemic foods, not the right foods. So it's what you're eating that is damaging, but also what you're not eating that you should be eating that's not helping. It's the lack of movement, the lack of exercise. Muscle mass is critically important in order to get the glucose disposal functioning. And muscles are actually the biggest endocrine, so hormone organ that we have. Aerobic exercise, works on the oxidative capacity of those little energy cells. So there's a mix of all these different exercises that are crucially important for us. And of course, natural light and stress management. Stress has a massive impact on how we handle this insulin resistance, and sleep, as you were mentioning. And it's a bit of it's always like this. And when we talk about these different health factors, is that everyone affects the other. So these are all the things we need to be kind of being wary of, to check on, but also everyone will be a benefit for the other. So it's wonderful because everyone will have a positive impact on everything else. You do more exercise, you're going to sleep better. You sleep better, your glucose management is better. If your glucose management is better, you're going to have less cravings for the naughty stuff, etc., etc. You see, so it's really this virtual cycle that only gets better, especially when you're able to kind of get into it from these different angles.
And I think it's important for people to know that not managing your glucose level, not managing your blood sugar level, correlates, put you at high risk of things
absolutely
like cancer, heart disease, mood swings, depression, anxiety, sleep disorders. It's very closely connected. I think a lot of people don't realize that.
For sure. So this
it's really important to know that. I mean, there are some fundamental things that changed with me: energy, fatigue, cravings, but sleep was a massive one. I was waking up all the time. And the moment I managed that, I was like, "Wow, I'm sleeping." It was quite profound. So I think it's so important for people to realize that. That brings me a little bit to, the next one, which, we talk about a lot, is hormonal issues for ladies. I've got ladies talking about perimenopause, menopause, fat around the belly, anxiety, depression, mood swings. Sleep disorder, urine sleep disorders, not sleeping quite often also. Again, these are things that I think that people put that in a camp of it's just menopause or it's just perimenopause. It's, it's a different box.
Yeah.
But what's so important for people to know, the wow factor for me again, is that actually you've got to manage your blood sugar level, and it's not complicated. Can you explain a bit more about that?
Yes. So first of all, I get very sad when women will kind of not want to talk about it or kind of hide it away as if it's like this, dirty thing that we don't want to talk about. It's a very real thing. We spend more than 30% of our life in this menopausal state. So it's a critical chapter of our life that, we can't just shelve and say, okay, then it's over. We don't need to accept these symptoms. Like, there's things that we can do about them and that we should be doing about them. And what happens when you get into perimenopause and the fluctuations of specifically estrogen and progesterone and testosterone tend to happen is that estrogen is a massive cardio protector. It's actually massive metabolic protector. And so, and we have estrogen receptors all over our body, everywhere, right? In the brain and every organ, they're basically everywhere. And so when these fluctuations happen, it confuses the body. And exactly to the point of this energy deficiency, because estrogen is also an insulin sensitizer, meaning that with little insulin, you're able to get the cell to basically open up the pathways to let the energy in. And so when you don't get that estrogen anymore, the cells don't have that signaling receptor, if you want, anymore to make that happen. And that's why these symptoms suddenly get aggravated. And usually what I'll find, though, is that really when you dig onto it, there were actually signals already prior to menopause. There were some things that are already going off prior to menopause, which of course then will be massively aggravated when you get into the premenopausal, in the premenopausal range. And so insulin sensitivity naturally suddenly goes down through this. So for sure you have to manage it, right? You have to manage it, because all the regular ones that we already know about, triglycerides, cholesterol, as we were saying, anything with brain fog, which is a big sign that you're not getting enough blood flow going. I take the example of hot flashes. Super uncomfortable. I imagine they must be horrible to live. It's a very fundamental, basic thing for your body to keep your temperature. If your body cannot do that anymore, it just gives you an indication by how much cellular confusion there's actually happening. So again, glucose control and glucose management is a very fundamental piece in this puzzle that is relatively easy to dial in and to get right with, exactly as you were saying. It does not have to be complicated. In fact, it isn't complicated.
It really isn't, yeah.
In fact, there are many risk factors that I think that in women's health sadly are not talked about, of the long-term consequences related to pregnancies, fertility, PCOS being one of them. It's like one of the biggest indicators of or reasons for polycystic ovarian syndrome is insulin resistance, and how few women are actually taught this when they're dealing with all kinds of fertility issues at a very young age, or even their period issues, skin issues. You were talking about acne, right? So there are many of these kind of topics that are indicating that there is something worrying going on. And of course, the longer you let them linger for later on, they just become bigger and bigger risk factors for these chronic diseases that we were just mentioning in the beginning.
But that's why an interview like this is quite important as like a light bulb moment for some ladies out there with even children, teenagers, young adults, to just, a few signals, not scary, but things can be corrected quite easily if you pay attention.
Yeah.
What is a glucose spike? And is it true the less spikes, the better? You can just talk about spikes a little bit when they see the graph and your spike goes up and down.
So I'll start off by saying that, the objective is not to have zero spikes, like to have no variation whatsoever. Like that is not the objective, because, in that case, you can just drink vodka and eat cheese all day long. You're going to get zero spikes. It's going to be perfectly flat. And I think we all agree that that's not healthy, right? So it's normal to have some amount of variation within there. However, the things that we know that are now proven to be correlated to issues, either in quality of life or, ongoing longitudinal studies on bigger chronic health issues, are things like too many spikes. So what I look at basically are how many spikes is the person getting? So this is the variability. So how many times is it going up and down? I especially look at the area under the curve. So that is a super critical one, because if I look at if a spike goes up, there is a certain time period in which it should be coming back down again. If that doesn't happen, so if it's lingering up there, that shows me that the cells are already insulin resistant. And if I take myself as an example, I have a really bad night's sleep and maybe a super stressy day. The following day, I will see that has massively changed. So I can already see I'm becoming more insulin resistant. So this really is a very dynamic thing, which is beautiful too, because it allows you to see the impact of your actions very quickly. So I look at the number, the variability basically. I look at the amount of spike, so how high is it going up, and I look at how low is it dipping, because this takes me to the hypoglycemic, reactive hypoglycemia, which is often correlated to a spike that's too high. So variability, area under the curve, the how many hypoglycemic dips the person is getting. And then I'll also look at things that are happening, for example, during the night, because how your liver manages glucose management during the night is hugely indicative of many other problems, or not, that are happening, because your liver the glucose should be practically completely stable during the night. So when there's big variations, that allows us then to peel back and say, okay, what might have influenced that? Is it the meal before? Is it alcohol? Is it your stress? Is it, other things that have been happening that are correlated to that?
Question about that, going into hypoglycemia at night. A few ladies mentioned that to me, dipping down.
Yeah.
Can you touch on that a little bit?
Fundamentally, yeah.
Say to me, like, oh, well, I'm okay, my blood sugar is actually very low. It actually goes very low. And I'm like, so this is why education is so important, because things can be corrected and reversed, but people need to know that going low hypoglycemia is not good.
No.
You can explain that.
No, exactly. So hypoglycemia basically shows that you're not able to manage your blood sugar correctly. And that can be due to several reasons. One can be that you're not getting enough in, so not enough substance. I see this a lot with triathletes, marathon runners, etc. So people who are just so low on their reserves that I really need to up specifically the macros in, so that they basically keep that going, because that's a stress. When you're under hypoglycemic, you're putting a massive stress on your body. You're sending a big stress signal to your body, not just even in terms of shutting down your metabolism even more, because your body's saying, oh, there's not enough energy coming in, so I need to slow my fire down even more. But also in terms of other things, right? Because your body is basically shutting down other systems, in order to keep that stable. So no, we don't want persistent hypoglycemic dips. That is definitely not a healthy sign. And then, so what are other things that can push it down? Alcohol will definitely push it down, because alcohol is so toxic that your liver just has to get rid of that first before it can deal with basic things like blood sugar control, and specifically toxic for women, because there's some enzymes that we don't have already, and even more that we don't break down, specifically when estrogen starts to drop. And otherwise it can also be exactly the fact that your liver is just overcharged, simply because you are getting maybe too many spikes, maybe you have too many hyperglycemic episodes happening, and so your liver is kind of struggling to dial that in. So the reasons can be various. No matter what, it's not good. So, it's good for it to be loose.
I mean, that's a big thing. You can reverse this.
You can absolutely reverse this, and you can reverse it quickly.
Don't panic out there. You can reverse this, but you've got to be proactive. You
have to be proactive. It can be very, very simple. And of course, as with all things, the longer it's been going on, the longer it's going to take for you to fix it. But you can fix it. And so this is something that when we're talking about the insulin resistance, that is something, and I have to go check what the latest statistic is, but it's definitely over 90% is completely reversible. And that includes really hard cases. And so, that is absolutely fantastic. It's a very positive news. And I think, as I was saying, for me, the glucose monitor is so much more than even just a food related question. It gives you a lot of indications of maybe other things that are maybe in your, what do you call it, the dead angle that you're maybe not seeing there, that can have a big impact on you.
Another thing is the A1C, which I think a lot of people are unfamiliar with, but when you monitoring your glucose level, you have the option to keep up to date with your A1C. I think you've got to be doing it for about 2 or 3 months to get an accurate, if that's correct, an accurate reading. Yeah. Can you explain, looking at the graph, looking at your A1C number, how it correlates and what you should be aware of?
So in short, it's basically a 3-month picture of what's been happening at in terms of your cells on that glucose question. And so basically, very simply put, it's almost like how thick is the caramel layer on your cells, right? So we're all constantly caramelizing. It's called the Maillard effect. So this is what happens when we basically burn the sugars and the protein. But to how quickly we're burning them, how thick that layer is, and how congested therefore the cell becomes because of that, that is what basically the indicator shows. So we want that to be low. We want that to be within a range.
Also, another question is, what is a glucose fasting level? So from what time to what time? So if you sleep in, is it a 10-hour, 12-hour? Could you just explain the technical glucose fasting level when you wake up and you look at your fasting level?
So it's the fasting level is simply just when you've had your sleep, assuming that it's been at least an 8-hour amount of sleep, what is your sugar level, your glucose level at that point, right? So that means that normally you haven't eaten at least for those 8 hours, while you've been asleep, and therefore your sugar levels should be within a certain range, a pretty low range, much lower than what what the labs will actually give as their range.
Another one for my runners or athletes out there is that glucose spikes. When I have a really tough session, I have a massive spike. And originally when that happened, I was thinking, gee, what's going on? But obviously, if you can explain what the performance spike means.
So there are basically 3 reasons that your glucose will spike. So the first one we all know is food. The second one is stress, because cortisol will actually release sugar from your liver and actually tell your cells shut down. I don't want that. I need this to deal with a stressful situation. And so those 2 require insulin or will lead insulin to go up. The third one is exercise, and that has a very different mechanism that then doesn't require insulin, and that's why it's not only very interesting, but it's actually very beneficial for us. So your liver will release the glycogen from its stores because it knows the muscles need them. And the muscles have a unique capacity, so they have a unique receptor that allows them to soak up this glucose without soliciting insulin along the way to make it happen. And so not only then muscles become a sponge for it, but these receptors actually move up to the surface. So it's a win-win-win-win-win. And so a glucose spike when you exercise is not only great, it's actually wanted. And in fact, sometimes with my clients, when they tell me, oh, I've exercised on that front, and I say, really? I don't see that anywhere in here. Looks really flat. In resistance training, you might not necessarily always get it, but whenever you've done a really good session, you should be seeing a spike related to that, and that's a good thing.
Okay, right. So I think what I'd love to know is, from your perspective, what are the key recommendations? Someone who wants to balance their blood sugar, what would you say your key recommendations are? I mean, obviously, I would say the number one would be get a glucose monitor. Get stuck into it for 3 months, you lose nothing, and it can only be a positive. That's my take from it. But I'd love to know yours.
Absolutely.
The key points.
Yeah, no, I could not agree more, because I said it's really is a truly personal journey, and there are lots of different things. I mean, how you will react, let's take blueberries, is going to be very different to how I react. Now, does that mean I'm never going to eat blueberries? No, but it's kind of interesting to know that maybe that's not my best snack. Maybe there's some other options that are going to be better. So I think it's a super interesting journey that, of course I'm convinced is worthwhile everybody's time to do it. Now, for those with or without a monitor, the key things to kind of look at, if I take the first one, nutrition. So from a nutritional point of view, the things we know are very important are, first of all, dial in your protein to make the things that your body needs, the amino acids, the key building blocks. And protein is also a very important signaling molecule, so in terms of all the neurotransmitters. So if you want to get enough protein in, the benchmark is minimum 1.6 grams per kilo of body weight, your target body weight. If you exercise a lot, that definitely goes closer to the 2 grams. And the older you get, it's the only macro that actually increases over time with age. So the older you get, the more you're gonna have to dial in. And so if you are an exerciser like you, I would say you're probably closer to a 2.2 per kilo of body weight that you're going to want to dial in terms of protein. The other one is fiber. Fiber is a great one to stabilize blood sugar because it creates a little mesh and therefore allows you to absorb the blood glucose much more slowly. And of course, it's great food for your gut microbiome. So that's a win-win-win. So, sprinkle on those basil seeds, flax seeds, whatever you have in terms of fiber elements, and of course vegetables a go-go, the more colorful the better. That takes me then to the antioxidants, which are also in the vegetables, because those really help mitochondrial function. And then there is the healthy fats, so specifically omega-3s that are really critically important to get those in. So healthy fats we know also slow down the glucose response. So that's kind of the key points on the nutrition side. The other key vector that we know, huge impact, is exercise. And even exercise already kind of has this notion of a lot, like movement. We now know clearly that moving after eating is the biggest thing, that simple thing that you can do. So a quick 10-minute walk after you've eaten your meal, huge impact. Even just doing, air squats while you're doing your dishes, just getting up and moving around, exactly the opposite of just staying slumped in your chair or sitting down in front of a TV, right? Just move, even if it's just for 5 minutes, huge impact. And interestingly on that, moving often throughout the day has the biggest impact. So more so than just saying, okay, I'm gonna sit all day and then I'm gonna do 1 hour gym. Every 30 minutes, you really should be getting up and moving your muscles, because every time you do that, you're creating a signal, a metabolic signal to soak up basically the glucose from your system. So movement is the other really important one. And then the other ones are, of course, sleep, good quality sleep, which are affected by the other two. And stress management is also a really important one. Specifically women in perimenopause are also at this age range where things are particularly complicated. I kind of call it the stress sandwich. You've got often the teenage kids, not always easy to deal with all that emotion, and you've got the aging parents often. So, you're kind of in the middle, you're getting it from all sides, and then you're dealing with all these hormonal changes as well. So, getting the stress resilience up, you're not going to be able to avoid the stress. It's happening anyway. So the stimulus, that's kind of the stressors, you can't necessarily impact them, but how you reacted, for sure, you can definitely work on, and that we know also has a big impact on glycemic control.
Points. This is not overwhelming. This is not an overwhelming thing to take on. It's actually crazy easy. And I think the only reason I took so long to do it is because in my mind I was like, oh gosh, it sounds complicated, a glucose monitor. And then I had app to watch things, and then got to change my eating. It just sounded like a handful. But if I only knew, it's really easy peasy.
Yeah. No, I think, the question mark we often have with a lot of these trackers going on is like, really, where do they add value? And that's, of course, the important thing for everybody to evaluate. And for me, this is one that adds massive value with very little effort, because you learn so much. And it's not something that you're doing for the rest of your life. On the contrary, right? The idea is that you do this for a very short period of time and you learn tons. From a nutritional point of view, the things are quite simple. Do a lot of the good stuff, and then a few of the things that that are maybe not good for you are not a big problem anymore. But if you don't do enough of the good stuff and you only do the problematic stuff, at some point, as we always say, you can't expect a different outcome if you continue to do everything the same. So you're going to have to accept that there's some things that you will change, but whether you look at it as a sacrifice or an enabler, I think is really a question of mindset.
Good. Sheila, I think what's really important, if you don't mind, I would like to list a couple things in this. One is maybe recommendation of glucose monitors, because I think this is your area. There's different ones on the market there, which is good, which is a waste of time and so on. And importantly, also your information, because I think my advice for people that are not in the health fitness space, don't go into it blind. Have a little bit of guidance and help as you venture into it, just to get you started. So just to leave your information there too, I think would be wonderful. But thank you so much. I mean, we go on and on, because there's so many, the subject breaks into different areas also, which I think is quite important, which maybe we'll do another video about, because it goes on. But thank you again. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.